Hello, Nathan here, and thanks for listening to this week's podcast. Before we get started, if you haven't had an opportunity to hear the Easter story this year, or if you aren't familiar with Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection, we highly recommend that you go to www.thebeaconbaptist.com and look for the big circle that says Watch Now, or the circle that says Passion Week, where you can actually listen to either our Sunday service from Easter, or you can listen to our devotionals during the week in regards to all of the things that take place leading up to Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. Again, that website is www.thebeaconbaptist.com. And again, you're looking for the circles that say either Passion Week or Watch Now. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy our podcast. Let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our podcast. It's Nathan, and you got Cameron, and a lot of exciting stuff this week. Cameron, you want to tell everybody a little bit about what's happened?
All right, so we've after the first episode of our new podcast, we came up with a name. It is called Plant the Seed Podcast, and we've been doing a lot of work with it. We are on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We have our own website now through Wix, and the podcast is on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, and we're working on getting it on Apple, but that takes a little longer. But we're pretty much everywhere, so that's pretty cool.
My mind was absolutely blown from just after the first episode. I think I checked this morning. There was something like 80 listens to it, which I didn't really do this for the listens. I don't feel like either of us did, but I just thought that was super cool. I've never had 80 people want to talk to me anyway. So.
Yeah, it's like 80 views is not a lot, but like without any pre-advertising, nobody knew about it until it came out. I mean, that's a decent amount of views for something that nobody knew about. But now that they know about it, maybe there'll be more. If you share with your friends and family.
I know on the last podcast we had said for people to put their name suggestions in the comments, which I don't think I had seen any. I do know I saw one person that said Beacon Podcast looked like it might fit. I feel kind of bad because I also feel like we said that and then we were trying to make it a game for a shout out for people, and then we made our own. So shout out to us for Plant the Seed.
Yeah, we won.
There you go. Congratulations, me.
I did have one friend. She told me pod with God. And I was like, yeah, we thought about that. It just didn't. It sounded a little too cheesy.
Yeah. Oh, it was something, though.
I'm sure that one's taken. It's too obvious.
Probably. It's really snappy, though. I can't imagine wearing a T-shirt that said pod with God. I'm sure I'd get a lot of questions if I wore that out.
I know. I don't think I could be caught dead wearing that shirt.
No. All right, so we're going to go through, we're going to reveal our quiz question. So if you listen to the last podcast, the quiz question was, or the trivia question was, how many grooves are on the edge of a quarter? Now, admittedly, I did not take the time out myself to sit down and go and count the grooves, although I know we told people that they probably should. It's funny, my mom actually listened to the podcast and she asked me, she's like, so how many is it actually? And I was like, you didn't count them? What are you doing?
Count? Yeah, it's like, I wonder how many people actually sat back and counted all of the grooves instead of just looking it up on the internet like we did.
Yes. Shout out to you if you actually counted those, because I didn't have the patience. But come to find out, on the little edge of your quarter, there's 119 ridges on it. And something that I learned when I found this question that I didn't know either is, despite the significant size difference between a quarter and a dime, supposedly the dime actually has 118 grooves, which is nuts. I can't
Yeah, it's like, how is a coin that's 2-3 times the size have only one more groove? Like the ones on the dime must be so minuscule. How do you even count them?
I have no idea. Although I didn't even try it with the quarters, so maybe it's easier than we know, and we just have to give it a shot. I'm not going to. I'm not that bored yet, but... All right, so did you have anything happen this weekend that was just or I guess this week, that was kind of cool?
Yeah, I haven't really done a whole lot. I mean, I went out biking
Okay.
once, and I mean that was fun. And I saw this one person at the store. They were like hoarding like 3 packs of toilet paper, and they were like sneaking around and like they were hiding it. I'm like, what are you doing? Like just to put it in your cart and walk away. Nobody's gonna steal it from you. But my brother, one of his friends, his mom was at the store, and
Mm.
somebody literally walked up to her cart, took it, and ran away.
What?
Yeah, just grabbed the toilet paper and ran.
It's
I'm
like
like,
the Black Friday of toilet paper.
yeah, I was telling my mom that I was like, it's like Black Friday, but every day. It's worse.
That's awful. I tell you, like I'm like terrified at this point in life to get like any type of stomach sickness where like I have to use a lot of toilet paper because I don't think I can get it.
Yeah, it's like anybody that has diarrhea at this time, I'm sorry, but
Sorry.
you're doomed. Like
Just yeet it out of somebody else's basket.
straight up grabbed it and ran away. I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
who does that?
That's awesome. Well, I really hope that person needed it and wasn't just like trying to stock up. So,
Oh yeah.
oh my word. Well, I did something really stupid yesterday, and if it wasn't stupid enough for me to do it once, I did it to myself twice. But I decided, so in my house, I've got this doorknob that when I moved in, it's always been broken. And I decided, like, I can fix that. Like, Bob the Builder, I'm gonna do this.
Oh yeah.
I can do it. And so it was originally taped all around. And so I pulled the tape off. And then I was like, okay, well, when I get the time, I'll fix this door. So I closed it. Well, dumb me didn't realize that the latch that actually locks, like, the door in place still functioned. So when I closed the door, I locked myself in my own office in my own house. So I Snapchatted it. People messaged me like, "Oh my gosh, are you gonna get out?" And then I did. Like 3 minutes later, I figured out how to pull the pin and get myself out of the room. So I told myself I wasn't gonna fix the doorknob on the inside anymore. I was gonna do it on the outside, and then continued to fix it from the inside, like a dum dum. So I thought I fixed the doorknob, and then I closed the door, and it broke again. And that time it was worse because I couldn't get to the pin I got to last time. So yeah, I locked myself in my own office. I have since fixed the doorknob, but yeah, that was my day.
Yeah, that is very stressful.
Yeah, I was
Say
just happy
one
I peed beforehand.
one time at camp, I was putting a new doorknob on one of the cabins, and I accidentally put the lock on the outside and locked myself in.
Oh
So,
no,
and I had to call somebody and have them come unlock the door for me because I
that's
locked myself in
awesome.
a cabin.
I just felt so like defeated. And it was one thing like the first time I had did it, I was like, "Oh, this is funny." And then the second time I did it, I was like, "Okay,
It's not funny anymore.
it's not funny." I had one cat in my room. I had the other cat outside the room. One wanted out, one wanted in. They're both smacking the door. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, just let me out. Somebody help." So, all right. Well, that kind of I want to lead us into our first segment here. So rather than try to find a current event, which trust me, we tried, but there was so much just COVID-19. We did find an article on like a smart toilet seat that like apparently reads your crap as you use the bathroom to tell you if you have cancer. That was interesting. But we decided to go ahead and look up odd Easter traditions around the world. And let me tell you, there are some odd Easter traditions around the world. First one here is probably one of my favorite, just because I'm probably just hungry, although I'm always hungry. But in France, France has a tradition in one of their towns where they make a giant omelet that consists of 4,500 eggs, so 4,500 eggs, and it can feed over 1,000 people.
Yeah, that one is very interesting and cool, especially because omelets are great. But I think the second one is a little stranger. Disclaimer: we do not condone these actions, but in the Czech Republic and Slovakia, there's this thing called whip cracking. So men and boys are encouraged to roam the streets like with decorated switches so they can lightly whip any ladies that they see, and it's to encourage like good health and beauty. We don't understand how that encourages good health and beauty, but we found it interesting that in this Czech Republic for Easter, they just like whipping women. I don't understand it.
It like takes away like 50 calories every little tap that you get. One thing that I did like read is that they did put like a disclaimer on it that it wasn't meant to hurt anybody, but either way, like
It's still weird.
it's just odd. I mean, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I need to wake up every morning and smack my own self with a stick, and like I'm gonna encourage my good health and beauty. That's what this is. This is actually a beauty tips channel. So if you want to
Yes.
get that tight skin and you want to look real clean and everything like that, you just go outside to your trees, you get yourself a nice little switch, you decorate that, and you just smack your thighs. It's boom, that's 20 pounds, that's 50 pounds gone. It's just watch it disappear. so
Yeah.
so the third one we have, those two are, well, I guess the omelet's fun. I don't know about the whip cracking. But while going through, I found one that I just absolutely loved. And in New Zealand, they have this day, they call it the Great Easter Bunny Hunt, where over 20,000 rabbits are killed each year. There's over 500 people who come out to hunt, and there's a cash prize. I don't know how they win it, but it just boggles my mind that once a year, their whole Easter tradition is to get rid of what they call like the vermin or the pest. It's wabbit season. They just come out.
Yeah, it's rabbit season. I'm like, and how do you win? Do you like? Is it whoever has the most rabbits? Whoever has the heaviest rabbit? Like, I want. How do you win in such competition?
The craziest thing was, at least the article I was reading didn't really even specify, but the prize that they had listed, and I don't know if it was like I don't know if New Zealand has like a different currency than us or not, but it was like $3,500. At least that was what was on the article. I don't know if that was like in our currency or their currency and what that's equivalent to, but either way, anything in the thousands to shoot a rabbit, I think is insane. And 20,000 rabbits.
Yeah, it sounds fun. I mean,
They should get together with France. They could have rabbit and omelet. They're gonna cure world hunger through this massive omelet and rabbit.
yeah, it's like who needs Thanksgiving? All the food is at Easter. Like,
Oh my goodness. I would just kind of crazy. I can't even imagine. Like, are they like holding this in a certain spot of New Zealand, or is this something they just know? They wake up on Easter morning and like, they kiss their wives goodbye and they strap their snipers to their back and they run out the front door. One,
and,
2, 3.
yeah, they don't go to like a specific woods. They're just like walking down the sidewalk, and every rabbit they see, they just bang to shoot them on the spot.
Get their BB guns out and just go for a walk. Like, how does that work now that they are like quarantined? If they're quarantined, they just like sit on their back porch and like Skype it and then show that they shot 500 rabbits and somebody gets a prize?
Yeah.
Oh my word. Another thing I think is absolutely, it's crazy is I think sometimes I forget that other countries have their own traditions. And, we got our like Easter egg stuff and your Easter basket, but like, can you imagine not getting any of that on Easter morning and just getting your slingshot and running, or a fork and running out your front door to feast off of your giant omelet?
Honestly, the omelet one doesn't sound too bad.
Right.
I think I might be okay with that.
I'm okay with that one. My word. Well, if you got a weird Easter tradition with your family that you do every year, post it down in the comments. I'm kind of curious to see what other people do. My family, my mom always got us like a big Easter basket and stuff, but she was very adamant about she didn't want to give us too much candy. So I got very lucky. I got like games and stuff for my Easter basket. I was very thrilled. So
Yeah, my we used to do Easter baskets with like each of us would get like a DVD and then some candy. We haven't done it in a long time, but now it's just like let's cook a ham and call it a day. But it's still fun.
You want to know what would go great with that ham?
Rabbit.
A rabbit and giant omelet. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and we'll get into our segment 2 here. By the time that this is released, it's either on Easter, like Sunday, or it's like shortly after. So we didn't want to do like a generic Easter necessarily like lesson. So we're gonna focus on Judas, which I guess is like you go from like this super happy Easter lesson to Judas.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna make it fun though. So I'm gonna go ahead and do our quick little summary. Just imagine that there's dramatic music here as I read this. I know I said I was gonna add it later last time. I didn't, which I think made it more fun. So imagine your own music here. All right, we got Judas, a follower of Jesus for many years and someone outsiders may have considered having a close relationship with Jesus, betrays Jesus for financial gain. His betrayal sets in motion the events that would lead Jesus, a man with no fault and who'd committed no crime, to endure one of earth's cruelest punishments, death by crucifixion. So first off, I kind of want to go ahead and just give a shout out to a few of the members of our church. This week, for Passion Week, a bunch of the members of our church put together a devotional every night so we could go through the entire story of Jesus. So all the events that take place before, during, and after the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So thank you to Jared Behringer, Bob Hunter, Brad, Adam, Pastor Riley, for all taking the time to put together those Easter week's devotions. It was great, if not to learn something new, but to also be given a reminder of what this time of the year is, that it's not about giant omelets or shooting hundreds of thousands or multiple thousands of rabbits, that it really is about what Jesus sacrificed and what he did for us.
Yeah, and it's really useful, especially now since we can't, like go to church, that they took the time to make devotions for us to do at home because, we need it. We have like this podcast and then now we have the devotions, but it's really hard to actually worship when you're not at church. So with all these things helping us out, it makes it a lot easier than just like sitting down and reading your Bible for like 5 hours.
I enjoyed a lot more too, at least for myself personally. Like I don't know if maybe I'm just like, I don't know, maybe I'm just old or whatever, but I sit down and I try to read something and my attention span doesn't last very long. So being able to watch something is really helpful, at least for me, to kind of just be able to sit down and relax and get something for the day. So yes, thank you for that. It definitely was appreciated, I think, from a lot of people for this week. But one thing that I wanted to focus on was specifically on Wednesday's lesson on Judas. I thought Brad asked a very interesting question that just kind of really stood out to me. He said, is Judas that much different than us? So that kind of made me start to ask myself, like, in what ways are you, or have you, in like quotations, betrayed Jesus in your own life?
Yeah, so like for me personally, it's like I wouldn't necessarily say I would like betray him and go out and like deny his name if somebody asked me I was a Christian or anything. But I'd say most of us are guilty of this, like putting other things in our life before him. And I think one of the biggest betrayals I have probably committed against Jesus is like having an opportunity to witness, but then not doing it because I was too scared or something. So I guess that is a form of betrayal because I didn't do what I was supposed to. Because I was too scared, and Judas did what he was not supposed to because he was scared of getting killed. Sure. And he also wanted money. But
yeah, I think I kind of had the similar mindset or thought the same thing. The times where I've had an opportunity to witness to somebody and haven't taken it, whether out of fear or for a really long time, like especially through my teen years, I really wanted to be like included in things or feel like I was a part of a group or just kind of like accepted by people. And I feel like for a really long time, in order for me to feel like I was getting that acceptance, that I was willing to compromise a lot of what I believed faith-wise. And started getting involved with, just a lot of worldly things. Like if you would have seen me probably 3 years ago, I think every other word that I was saying at that point was probably a swear word. And if I had tried to even witness to someone, my actions just were not reflecting it. So I agree. I think my betrayal in regards to Jesus for that time period, and where I think that a lot of Christians probably struggle with, is taking those opportunities to be a witness, whether you're sharing your reason for hope or you're showing it through your actions. I think we can kind of betray God in that way.
Yeah, I was like the same way, like early on in high school, like ninth and 10th grade. It was like up until I went to start working at Camp Chautauqua, I would like just never witness to anybody for a while. Like I did when I was in like middle school, but then like the first 2 years of high school, I was like, yeah, no, it's not the move. I want to hang out with these people, and if I mention anything religious, they're gonna be like, you're weird. So I just never talked about it like ever. And I started working at camp like between 10th and 11th grade, and I learned there it's more important to just like say what you believe than just have people's opinions drive how you act, because it's not really worth it to just live for other people, because a lot of those people that I lived by their opinions for kind of like stabbed me in the back. So
Sure.
yeah, it's like you spend all your time like not living for Jesus and living for the people around you, and then they're not going to even stick around. So it's just a waste of time.
Well, one thing too, especially I think in that Easter time period, it's very easy to get kind of in that emotional state where you just kind of follow the crowd, and people come out of the woodworks you haven't seen in years that just show up because it's Easter. Which, not that there's really necessarily anything wrong with that. Like, obviously we want them to be there, but I think what's even more important though than taking that one day a year to go do something is, what are you doing on every other day after Easter? What are you doing on every other day that isn't Easter Day or Christmas Day or something like that? And one thing that I got to thinking about when it comes to betrayal is that if you betray Jesus, or if we betray Jesus, or even in the fact that Judas betrayed Jesus, you don't just betray Jesus. In a lot of cases, you end up betraying everybody else that could have had an opportunity to hear the gospel or be able to learn something new from you by not following Jesus and being a follower of Christ, or doing something with what you're saying you believe.
Yeah, a saying that goes along with that, I've heard it many times, I'm sure you've heard of it, is like, say, being a Christian is a lot like, if I had like the cure to cancer and I didn't tell you about it, I would be a pretty bad person. So it's like, if I have the answer to salvation and I don't share it with you, I'm a pretty bad person, I would say, because if you have the answer or the cure for something, you should probably tell everybody that you know, so that people aren't like dying, because it's just not very fun.
Right. And I mean, look at it. People want to hear about whether or not they have cancer. They're making toilet seats that analyze your crap to tell you if you have cancer. Why?
Oh yeah.
Why aren't we as Christians, being a little more cognizant? And I'm guilty of that myself. Not taking those opportunities. But kind of a follow up to that question. I took a quote that Brad had said in that video that I kind of wanted to expand on and talk about in this podcast. But he said, sometimes we're using Jesus and Christianity as a ride to where we want to go. And the moment when it stops functioning the way we want it to, or it forces us to do something that doesn't fit what we think life should be, we walk away. Which I think we as Christians, I think, can sometimes even reflect that in the things that we do, the way that we live our lives, that people who are out around us that watch what we do can see that. So was there a time in your life where salvation was viewed, maybe for yourself or maybe by those around you, as just a ride to heaven or kind of like an escape?
Yeah, I'd say like, I know a lot of people are like this, and I used to be like this when I was a bit younger. And it's like, I used to look at Christianity as like, I'm going to follow Jesus so I don't go to hell, rather than thinking of it as, I'm going to follow Jesus because I want to. It's like, at this point in my life, I'm like, I like going to church. I like worshiping,
Sure.
and I do this because I want to do it. 3-4 years ago, I was like, I don't want to go to hell, so I'm going to go to church.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it was more out of fear than like love for God that I was doing anything.
Sure. Yeah, I think when I grew up in church and stuff, and when I think I was like 8 years old, I think it's the first time where I had kind of I had believed that I had gotten saved at that point, but I don't think I really understood what that meant. Like you had said, I think I kind of looked at it at the same way. Like I wanted an escape from hell because it sounded terrible. So I followed a set of like steps. I don't think I followed faith. So I don't think it was until I was much older, probably 13, 14, until I kind of started to understand that a little more. And unfortunately, I don't think it was until I was probably 19 or 20 until I had actually started trying to follow God with my actions and really put a faith basis into building a relationship with God, and not just, I guess, like a taught way of doing things. One thing is, I think that especially if you've grown up in church your whole life and you haven't heard anything different, that it's very easy to just get into, I call it like the Christian routine, where you've analyzed and watched enough Christians or people who are saved live their life a certain way that they start to mimic that, but it doesn't really ever come, internalize in themselves. And I think I did that for a lot of years. So yeah, I think that we as Christians have to be very careful not to utilize Christianity as a ride to where we want to go.
Yeah. A follow-up question to that is, like, as you were saying, about kind of like pretending like you're at church, but you're not like doing it because you want to. You're doing it because you're scared of going to hell, or for whatever reason that you're there. And the next question is like, what's the difference between being a church attender versus being a follower of Jesus? Which is also a good question for what you mentioned earlier about people, like they'll go to church like once or twice a year, be like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian. I go to church on Christmas and Easter. But like, to you, what do you think it means? Like, what's the difference between going to church and actually being a follower?
Sure. I think Judas is a great example of that. If we kind of look at who Judas was, one thing that Brad had mentioned is Judas is a person that's followed Jesus as a disciple for years, 3+ years. And one thing that Brad had mentioned in that lesson is he's so close to Jesus, like physically close to the Jesus, and yet misses the mark. He completely misses the main point of who Jesus is and what he's there for. So to me, I think the big difference between being a church attender versus being a follower of Jesus is, I think you can be in any building. I mean, you can go to school and be in attendance at your school, but if you're not learning, if you're not there with some kind of goal in mind that you're going to grow or get something out of your classes and go farther, your grades aren't going to go up. It's not going to mean anything to you. You're not going to necessarily internalize that. You're not going to change. I think the same applies to when you're talking about, when we're looking at Jesus. You can either follow and learn and have that experience and grow, or you can just be in attendance of a place. And church was never supposed to be necessarily a place. It's the people. It's, what makes up that the not a location or a building, but, followers of Christ. So, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's like, I know I used to think like just going to church, reading your Bible, and praying is like what made you a Christian. I know a lot of people actually think that it's like, oh, I'm a Christian because I go to church, I read the Bible, I pray sometimes. I think it's like some 90-something% of Americans profess to be Christians. I'm like, but if you look in America, that number is very likely not accurate, because many people who profess to be Christians don't exactly act like it. I know I'm guilty of that a lot of the time, and so are a lot of other people. And I'd say, rather than just like, oh, I go to church twice a year, I read the Bible sometimes, I pray every once in a while, like I pray for dinner, It's like worship in church is awesome, but also worship in your life. Like go to work and or school and tell people about God instead of just like doing your little daily routine, and then 5 months later you're like, I think I'm gonna go to church, and then like another 5 months goes by and you're like, I think I'm gonna go to church. It's like it's a very tricky thing, but I think a lot of people fall into that boat.
Yeah, I think I did for a lot of years. Um, going to church, I think for a while was something that I did because again, going back to that idea of routine, my parents went and my grandparents went and the family went. And so I just went because that was kind of what was there. And I don't think it was until I had gotten to more of that college age where everybody's going to be faced with that question for themselves of what what is it that I do? Am I going to attend a church or am I going to stay at home? I think more importantly though too is the big difference between church and being a follower of Jesus is being a follower of Jesus is it's a personal choice. It's something that takes growth and that you have to learn and that you got to build over time. Going to church is just waking up in the morning and going to a building. So especially right now in this COVID-19 quarantine scenario, you can't go to necessarily a building. And I think right now is a great time to self-reflect and look at, where am I in my personal life when it comes to not being in like the church building, but where am I in regards to following Jesus? Am I doing the things that I should be based upon the examples that Jesus had set beyond just going to an Easter sermon and actually practicing that on a daily basis in life? And I think that that's where Judas met that question before he betrayed Jesus of, are you just here in my presence? Are you here just because this is your routine for 3 years? Are you quote unquote just in the church building, or are you actually a member? Are you actually following me? And I think when we as Christians are faced with that same question, I think we would just as much in our own way betray Jesus.
Yeah, and just like following with that, there's like a couple other questions about this is like a 3-part question. Mm-hmm. So when you are either at church and doing what you're supposed to, or you're at church because of a routine, or you're just not there at all, like how do those 3 stages, like how have you seen that affects your personal life?
Sure. I think the story of Judas does this really well. I think you can look at Judas in 3 different sections too. You can see Judas before being a disciple at all. You can see Judas as his life after becoming a disciple. And, it's unfortunate, but I think that the story kind of gives you that bit of where Judas misses that mark. So I think if we were to break it down into 3 questions, the first one might be something like, where maybe I've seen a difference in my personal life when I'm not at church at all and I'm not following Jesus. So I'm not doing either of those things. And in those time periods where I've done neither, is when my life just went way out of control. I think I mentioned it earlier. I was swearing all the time. My music choices were awful. I think if people had looked at me, I was not, you couldn't see Jesus. It wasn't there. At that point, I don't even think I was trying to act like I knew Jesus anymore. I wasn't even trying. My attitude and mindset towards a lot of people really was awful too. One thing I used to do, I used to have a YouTube channel where I was streaming gaming with what used to be my old roommate. And I went back recently to go like years ago to see the type of person I was at that time. And within like the first 2 minutes of the pod or the stream that I had done, I was like already insulting the roommate I had at the time. And I don't even recognize the person anymore. So yeah, so that was kind of where I was when I wasn't at church and I wasn't following Jesus. So like in your personal life, have you ever had a time where you weren't at church and not following Christ, where it kind of affected you?
Yeah, same. It's like I've also like grown up in church. I've been in church my entire life, but I think this summer I was working at camp, and when I came back, I think I was out of church for like a month, maybe a month and a half.
Mhm.
Uh, and for that like whole month and a half, I was like my life was super just out of whack, and a bunch of stuff was going on. And I see that like when I am not going to church, my whole life is just not necessarily bad things happen because I'm not going to church, but it's like I can see in my personal life my relationships with people weren't good. I was like pushing a lot of people away, and just I was being like mean to people and not really caring about anything. But I'd say like the second part of this question is like when I'm actually in church, especially the last like several months. When I am actually in church and focusing on it and living it like day to day and actually caring about it, my relationships with people, like specifically my fellow like seniors at Beacon, I've gotten a lot closer with them in the last few months. I think that's because I've actually started caring more about going to church. Because like I've been in the vintage band for like 3 years, 4 years, and like that was more of a routine. But now I'm going to church. I'm like, yes, I want to be here. So like my relationships with the people there are better, and I'm like really close with a lot of my fellow like seniors.
Sure. Yeah, I think that kind of goes a little bit into the kind of that third idea of not just being at church, but you're also following Jesus though with the opportunities that he's giving you in those places. And yeah, the feeling, or I guess I don't want to say just like an emotion, but the life change that that brings is something that's very unique. I don't think you find that anywhere else, and it's very hard to describe to people too, though, because it is just so special. I think the times where I was only at church and I wasn't necessarily following Jesus, they were definitely better than the times when I just wasn't at church and I wasn't following Jesus. But kind of like what Judas experiences, where he just kind of misses the point. Like he might just be, he's in the presence of Jesus, but he's not necessarily following Jesus. I think you can get some encouragement there. I think that there's a lot of things that you can learn of what you should be doing by being, of course, at the church or around other people that do follow and believe in Jesus Christ. But until you take that step to actually follow and do something beyond what is just kind of the normal, I think that that's where you start to actually hit the mark rather than miss the mark as a Christian and start to grow. And that's where, especially after Easter, I think is so critical that we don't become just the Easter Christian that shows up and follows Jesus that once a year, but we actually take that and we grow and we live our lives as an example past that, so that we're not like Judas, where we're just showing up that one time and then betraying Jesus afterwards.
Yeah, it's really tough, especially like in your younger days, like in high school.
Mm.
I'd say the reason I was like so away from God in like my first couple years of high school was because like in middle school I would like try to witness to people, but I would like lose motivation because either they would ignore me or like flat out say that they disagreed with me, or I would just get scared. And so I lost motivation. And then I got into high school. I was like, nobody really cares what I have to talk about, so I might as well just not talk about it.
Sure.
So it's like it's really easy to lose motivation with being a Christian, but once you have that motivation, it's really rewarding.
Right. Yeah, I think one thing I have to consistently remind myself is, where in the Bible it talks about us being ready to give our reason for hope, anytime that somebody asks us that. And I think I get so caught up sometimes with trying to give the verses, or not that you shouldn't, obviously you should, but I think I get so caught up with trying to give a certain story that I forget to share why I'm hopeful. Like, what is it that really drives me to want to follow Jesus? Or what drives me to not have to live a life of fear and regret and doubt and all of these different things? And when it comes to being a witness and kind of doing what we're called to do, I think that that's what I have to really focus on is why am I hopeful? And I think that a lot of us as Christians forget that. We forget where we came from, what we've been saved from, and kind of where our goal, our end goal, or where we are blessed to be able to live, or whatever the case is, from the point that you get saved after.
Yeah, and it's like even if you're like me and you have a little bit of that social anxiety, you don't even have to necessarily flat out say, "Hey, you want to come to church with me?" or "Hey, you want to read this Bible verse?" Just being like nice to people
Sure.
and being there for somebody could show them that you're different, because most people are probably not the kindest to them. So if you just like show them that you care about them, you don't even necessarily have to mention Jesus, but they'll see that you care. So they'll see that you're different, and then you'll build a relationship with them, and that's where you can mention Jesus, because obviously you don't want to just flat out say, "Hey, you want to come to church with me?" to somebody that you're not close with, because they'll probably think you're crazy.
Just put it on your van like a giant sticker, like, "Hey, free church." Like, oh
Yeah.
goodness. No, but I mean, the other side of that though too is I have this phrase that I used to tell a lot of the teens. I try to live by it myself, is be different, do different. As a Christian, I think we have a responsibility to do both of those things. We have to be different in our lives. As a Christian, we're not meant to sit there and follow everything that we were, following before. You're meant to have that born again experience, which I know sounds crazy to some people, but you're meant to change. And I know that can be maybe a scary thing sometimes, but I guess you kind of have to ask yourself, are you comfortable with where you're at in life right now? And if the answer is no, then the only option is to change. And what better than to have a change where you're basically provided everything already? It's the easiest solution out of a lot of that kind of stuff. And then that idea of doing different, and that comes with actions and the things that you do. And like you said, if you have social anxiety, or you don't really feel like you can do certain things, like maybe you've not been called to teach or be in front of a bunch of people. I know that that's like a really scary thing sometimes. Just being willing to show Jesus through the actions that you do every day, I think, is already being sort of a witness to people too. So,
Yeah. And so on a little bit of a lighter note, how have you been doing this week? I know for me personally, it's like this boredom is really kicking in. But after this, the first episode came out, and we've been really busy doing stuff for the podcast, I find myself not so bored. So this week hasn't been too bad.
right. No, I've been doing well. I mean, yesterday, I don't feel like I had the time to be bored because I was freaking out about how I was going to escape my own house, my own office. So that was
Oh yeah.
an experience. No, I've been trying to keep myself busy. This podcast is definitely something that I really look forward to, every week, and something that I think is just it's fun. It's different.
Yeah.
I hope everybody
Yeah,
else is having fun with it.
it's made my week very interesting, and very fun. I like going through the social media and seeing what people have to say. We've gotten some pretty good feedback. Everybody that has listened to it that I know has said that they enjoyed it. So thumbs up. It's great.
Sweet. Yeah. If you guys have ideas, segments that you want to see, or you want to be on here, whatever the case is, you want to be involved or something like that, send us, comments, or message us on the social media platforms. Let us know. This is something that we're very interested in growing, not just as two people, but we want everybody's input. We'd like to be able to build this as an outreach together. One thing that I think is really neat about this platform is, if you're somebody who's just really scared of being in front of people, but yet you still want to talk, or whatever the case is. I mean, I don't know about you, Cameron, but I'm sitting in my office all by myself, with a mic, and there's nobody here.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing, and it's like a couple times I've like preached in Revolution, and once I preached in Vintage. I'm like, I really like talking, but when I'm standing in front of a group of people, I just like get super nervous and get anxiety. But when it's just by myself, speaking into a microphone, I find it much easier because I have nobody looking at me.
Sure.
So it's fun. I can enjoy it more. So
the first time I tried to teach at Beacon, I was getting up and I was walking to the stairs of our like pulpit, and I tripped. And I nearly face planted. I had just gotten up. It was crazy. So, but oh my word. Well, do you have anything else that you kind of want to add, or anything going on?
Not too much. It's been a fun week. A little bit of stress worrying about the podcast, but it's all in all, it's been really fun. But moving on, smooth transition to the third segment, trivia.
Yes. So we tried to find a trivia question that required you to do something like last time we had counting all the different ridges on the quarter. I couldn't find anything else, but Cameron came up with our episode title this week, or the name for our episode, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And if you know what it comes from, like, and you know the story it comes from, it is perfect for the story of Judas. But so the question this week is exactly that, though. From what classic play is this episode's title a reference to? And again, the title is Et tu Judas, which is great. I don't know of how many people are actually going to, like the younger generation who doesn't read.
I don't know how many people will actually know, but if you do know, leave a comment down below on any of our social platforms and tell us who the playwright was and what the actual play title is called. And if you get it right, we'll give you a little shout out.
And take a look at like the description of what the phrase means too, because when you figure out what play it's from and you figure out where the phrase is from, trust me, you'll appreciate the episode title a whole lot more. I thought it was brilliant.
It was really fun. I was sitting there trying to come up with the title for the episode. I was like, at first I had like Easter : he has risen. I'm like, that's the most basic thing ever. Everybody's done that. So
it's better than Pot of God.
Oh yeah.
Like some of the other ones we've come up with.
Anything is better than Pod with God.
Oh my goodness. This is like the segment I was thinking about trying to make for this. I think I call it like soiled with, and then like some kind of person is, oh no, that sounds so bad. So
yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us again. Reach out. Don't hesitate. We'd love to get some input and see what else we can do to make this more fun for you guys as well.
Yep. And also, don't forget, the website is live. And so if you go to the website, the link will be in the description if you're on YouTube, and it's in the bio of all of our social media, which is Instagram, Twitter, and a Facebook page. And then we have YouTube, Anchor, and Spotify, and soon Apple. If you go to the website, there'll actually be links to all of our social media in that one place. So you don't have to like go searching for everything. It's all there for you. So just go to the website and everything is there. And we hope you enjoy it. It's been a lot of fun making it.
And even if you don't enjoy it, try to enjoy it. Why not?
Yeah.
Do it the best you can. So, alrighty, guys. Well, until next time, remember to be different, do different.